it refers back. Let me refer back to what I mentioned earlier. I don't think that we're going to see significant changes in the political culture in Washington until the American people rise up and insist on it. And I think that's the opportunity in this election. The American people are not as divided as our politics would suggest. I think that I've met an awful lot of them. That's one of the privileges of running for president, is you meet a lot of Americans from all walks of life. And there are genuine differences. I mean, there are regional differences. Interestingly enough, though, I think the differences these days are more urban versus rural or suburban rather than, southern versus northern. You go to Charleston, South Carolina, and that has more in common with San Francisco probably than Bakersfield has with Los Angeles. But I think everybody shares a basic sense that government's not working. The problem is that you've got a very close balance of power in Washington, and the general attitude of whoever is the minority party is we're just going to block things from happening. The majority party typically is pushing a highly ideological agenda. Now, I confess I'm a Democrat, so I don't think it's completely even. I think that there's more of that coming from the other side, but we're not blameless in this. And the only way to, I think, really break the gridlock is if during this election season, the voters reward candidates who aren't playing ideological games, aren't engaging in vitriolic politics, are trying to come up with common sense solutions, are presenting the other side's case fairly. And if we have a president who is elected with that mandate of bringing people together, and we have a Congress that understands it's going to be accountable to the American people, then I think you've got a chance to get something done. I'll give you a very specific example. I use this example often on the stump. I've proposed a plan to provide health care to every American. I'll be honest with you. My plan, Hillary Clinton's plan, John Edwards' plan is not. None of those plans are all that different. All three of us differ fairly significantly with the Republicans, who think that you can just provide people a few more tax credits and somehow that's going to solve the problem. I don't think that's the case. But regardless of what your plan is, the question is, how do you get it done? Now, I respect the Clintons back in '93 for actually having tried to get this done. But, see, I think they did it the wrong way because they went behind closed doors. And, there are famous stories about how even Democratic members of Congress who were on key committees weren't invited into the process, and so as a consequence, that made it almost impossible for them to persuade, work through their bill through Congress, but more importantly, the American people weren't enlisted into and engaged in the argument. They didn't know what was going on, and so public opinion turned against the Clintons very quickly. And I've always said that I will have a table like this where all the key players are sitting, and we'll televise it on C-SPAN, so that the American people understand what the choices are. If we want to control healthcare spending, then we're going to have to put more money into prevention. If we are going to reduce the cost of prescription drugs, then there's going to have to be some negotiation with the drug companies on cheaper prices. As a bulk purchaser, we're going to have to use that leverage. There are going to be responsibilities for citizens that we've got to make some difficult choices in terms of end-of-life care. And, the 20% of patients who account for 80% of the costs, we've got to figure out how do we manage the chronically ill more effectively. There are a whole host of things that if you talk to the American people sensibly about it, you're not going to get 100% agreement, but at least now they understand what's at stake. And so if congressmen start trying to play games, the public understands. And that's why I think it's so important to open up the process.
So is your